So, good morning, everyone. For everyone who is watching us live, as well as everyone who will be watching the recording later, because the topic for today's discussion is going to remain relevant at least for the coming decade, and that's why we are here today. I have with me, I'm Rituparna, a parent in Shishya Waldorf School, and we are streaming this in the interest of the larger community and a vital topic, the future of society and economy tomorrow, which brings us to holistic education. And it is our pleasure and privilege to have eminent guests with us today from, it'll be fair to say, all parts of the world. We have India and North America, and that's pretty large in representing the major world problems and solutions. And so I will quickly introduce our panelists to you. We have Van James, who's an accomplished artist, an author, and teacher. He has to his credit, multiple best-selling books in the area of arts and its impact on our consciousness. He's a graphic designer and a trainer as well in multiple colleges and Steiner Waldorf schools, a council member of the visual arts section of North America, and multiple such engagements across North America and elsewhere. Um, he also conducts multiple workshops for parents and teachers in the world of community and much other such work. Sorry, did we hear something? Okay. Okay, so that's one for us. It is very interesting to have an artist who has worked directly in education. We then have Mrs. Chitra Inamdar, who's a senior psychotherapist based in Mumbai, practicing since last 24 years and teaching psychotherapy for about a decade. She's the director of the organization called Apara, which is dedicated to creating sustainable mental health through training and research in India. Her forte is to bring creativity in parenting, education, and psychotherapy concepts. That's again very valuable because we like to believe that education impacts mental well-being pretty directly. We then have Mr. Prashant Kumar, who is the co-founder and CEO of a social project, the Apprentice Project, a qualified engineering and management graduate from premium institutes in India. He's backed by more than 20 years of professional experience in consulting and education. And he responded to his inner calling to contribute to the field of education. Joined Teach for India as a fellow for 2 years, where he focused on providing quality education to the children from low-income communities. And then, with a vision to empower every child to realize who they are and achieve what they want to be, he co-founded TAP to drive a movement towards holistic education for children from low-income communities. Education really encompasses all children, irrespective of socioeconomic communities, and that's why it's a very relevant conversation. We then have Mrs. Vandana Basu, the co-founder of Shishya Waldorf School. She is qualified in commerce, in textile design, and multiple other areas, but her heart really found its place with children in education. She has over 25 years of experience. She's the author of a children's poetry book, In My Heart Is a Song, and has been part of mainstream education for several years in international schools. But what's interesting is she chose to go down the less trodden path and retrained herself as a Waldorf educationist, and is now teaching, training, and building the community at Shishya actively. So that sets the stage for what we have today. I'm pretty warmed up for a meaningful discussion. I guess all the panelists are too. To begin with, I would we are from a Waldorf school and we follow what Rolf Steiner really left behind for us to absorb and pass to this world. So I would read a quote from him about what he had to say for education. So he says, our highest lives. Beyond this, I feel nothing else needs to be said, because if that is the vision for our society and economy, then all of us are pretty much there. Another one where he says, the need for
You might
imagination.
need to repeat the quote there because we lost you in the middle.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Couldn't hear what you
Okay.
read out. So if you could
Sure,
please
sure. I will read that again.
Thank you.
So Rudolf Steiner has said, our highest endeavor must be to develop free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction to their lives. It's pretty all-encompassing in terms of raising human beings as such, and directed towards future of society and economy. Another one, just to complete in meaning, the need for imagination, a sense of truth, and a feeling of responsibility. These three forces are the very nerve of education. If you resonate with what he said, then I would like to pass the baton to each of you one by one, addressing if this is what we are meant to do as educators, then where are we today in terms of education? What does it mean to us individually, as well as where are we today as a society and economy? And if you would like to share, then what are the gaps you see which made you do the work that you do currently? So, Prashant, can we begin with you?
Yes, definitely. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, very clearly.
Okay. So yes, for me, and then just drawing inspiration from what you just shared as well, education, I believe, is an enabler for children to learn how to think, and I mean, use that to explore the world around them, probe questions, and seek answers for themselves. Unfortunately, in a vast majority of the cases that we see around, and then particularly in India, we see the education system telling children what to think, and then focuses on imparting knowledge which is already predefined. But in my view, education should give the tools for children to see the world for themselves from their own eyes, think for themselves, seek answers to the questions that matter to them, and build solutions to the problems that bother them. And then that, I feel, is the true education that should be there.
That was very succinct and comprehensive. Thank you, Prashant. Suchitra ma'am, would you like to address is what needs should education meet in the current scenarios, particularly in the context of mental well-being, which I think is a very large part of social issues that we see today? And what do you see in parents and students today that they are struggling with, or what is it they are seeking?
Yeah, thank you, Rituparna, to ask this question, and it's of course a very meaningful question. And if we look at the Steiner quotes that you had just read out, there is a lot of meaning into it for the simple reason that we can go on and on meditating over them to discover huge amount of questions that can come out of these quotes, and one important part of it is that what is really education, and what Steiner says and what many other philosophers in education also will say the same thing, and taking the thread forward from what Mr. Prashant just spoke about. We are talking about thinking, and it is very important that we bring about the truth of self and the truth of the world to a child. Now, we have to remember that for a child, this is not a unilateral process which is happening just all by himself or herself, that the child is creating. So here the adults with the child become a very important catalyst. Now the gap that we see is with the adults, it's not with the children. And that's an important part of the education process, where am I bringing the right kind of adult? Am I the right kind of adult in the first place, to educate a child, to be with the child? And am I capable of bringing in, curating, let us say, to some extent, till maybe the children are at least 9 or 10 years old? So even when we work in a psychotherapeutic practice, unless we are doing some very specific kind of work with younger children, we do not take children below 8 or 9 years of age into therapy, because that's not the right way to go. You have to work through the parents, you have to work through the adults who are there to shape the child, and this is an important part of the education process. So for me, education, like, to get a gist of all these great philosophers who have spoken about education and written so vastly and done such great amount of work in the world, may it be Steiner or Sri Aurobindo or even J. Krishnamurti, or such scholars that we can read, all of them will talk about this one thing, and which is the truth of oneself and truth of the other. So I'm sure Van James, being an artist, and as you all know, I'm a musician myself. Uh, it's not right for us to give out an opinionated understanding to a child about, for example, who is a good painter and who is a good singer, which is very immature. You get what I'm saying? But if the child knows what is art, what is the right kind of pitching, what is the right kind of sur, okay, what is the right kind of percussion, what is the right kind of tal, and what is the right kind of, or the most appropriate color scheme in a particular. So it's not like, Steiner says, in when he is also talking about how to introduce colors to children, we don't say that, oh, this is bad and this is good. We expose the children to all things, and then we give them an understanding that what connects to your soul, what connects to your soul better, what seems better in a given circumstance, because it is appropriate. So this kind of an understanding of the truth and discovering the truth is a huge part of the education system, which empowers me to make my own solid opinions when I am an adult. And I am not just taking in opinions from the world around me. Okay, this person said this and that person said this, so I'm just accepting it. No, I have the capacity to judge for myself, because I have the template of the truth. Now, what else do I require? Right? Now, that is something that we really need to work at. So, education actually means working with adults and allowing the children to grow the way they are growing in the most divine sense. I
I
hope that has
couldn't,
made some sense. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you, as I'm reparenting myself in the process of educating my children. And also, it is pertinent at this stage that just 2 days ago we had Swami Vivekananda's birthday, and he said education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. So what you said sounded an elucidation of that. It's to bring out what there is, what we are already gifted with. So that brings me to Van to give us a global perspective on how you see education. I would just like to share here, for humor as well as for that, even in the mainstream system, that many like to believe that, of course, there are varied opinions. Again, adults have all sorts of opinions, but many like to believe that abroad, US and Europe especially, have more structured, more all encompassing education systems. that is why for the people who mean to or can afford it also go abroad for higher studies, even from India today, at least in the last couple of decades, as we have seen it. So, how do you see in that part of the world and the gaps even therein? And therefore, what have you learned in your work of artistry and education in the last decades?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I agree with the definitions we've already heard from my two colleagues. I would definitely agree with how they've characterized education. And we usually think of education as the accumulation of knowledge. But if that knowledge isn't advanced through intelligence, to something that would be closer to what might better be described as a wisdom about life, then it's not entirely useful. Education today we mostly see in the West, and I'm sure this occurs also in India and Asia as a whole, that our education is based on developing just the thinking. It's working with words and with numbers. And this is not the full potential of the human being. You know, we have color, we have tone, we have texture, we have movement, we have gesture and form. And those are all languages that we can develop as human beings. And if we develop further beyond a strictly intellectual way of learning, we really have the development of imagination, of inspiration and intuition, which can form who we are as human beings. It can actually create a future that is more deserving of what it is to be a human being. So I think that we need to be careful not to limit ourselves in education, which we often find in state-run education. That's why I was so attracted to Waldorf education, because it really is an art form. So those are some of my thoughts on education.
Thank you, Van. Firstly, sorry for the interruption. There seems to be a tech glitch at my end. Hopefully, it should go fine now. That sounds like that gives a more expansive picture. What Van said gives us a more expansive picture of how expansive the education should really be. We can't pin it down to, like Suchitra ma'am said, the right and wrong. Van said that defining or nailing, okay, this is how it should be, or how Prashant said that to be able for children to be able to grow up and think independently. So that brings me to Vandana ma'am, and you have been you have gone through grades 1 to 8 at Shishya Waldorf School, as well as you have seen several students in your teaching career. What do you think is the gap, and how can we address it?
So let me begin by saying that I cannot say anything very different from what has already been spoken, but maybe in a different way. To me, education is a process of self-discovery. Like I said, it's not very different from what everyone has said. Ideally, people have always associated education, the way I have understood it, to more like the academic skills and life skills, and I couldn't agree less. Yes, it is a means of creating a life and livelihood and everything, but it cannot be limited to that. It has to be more than that, because only when it is a little more than that can we also work at creating quality in our lives. Most of us, we can see, is at this age also seeking quality in our lives. We are now struggling to understand, how do I bring the calmness inside me? How do I hear myself? How do I really experience myself? But if this quality can already be integrated in children and their education processes where it is so naturally available to them, then I think education begins to become a very holistic experience. The craving that we grown-ups have as me time is something that even children crave for. But we officially demand it and make time for ourselves. But for children, I think we already know the story. What is happening to education today and how children are running pillar to post, trying to acquire what they have understood to be education. So, really speaking, I echo what Suchitra said, that education is not bound to just children. Education is all about, from the day the child is born, a mother is educating, or rather transforming a child from being a divine being who doesn't know the ways of the world into transforming that child into living with this world. We teach them the ways of the world. From a time where a child wants milk every 2 hours, we transform that experience, or help the child transform in a way that it sleeps through the night. And that is the beginning of how we are teaching our children to become one with this world. That experience in an informal way begins with the child discovering what a family is, what a society is, what a community is. And from informal settings, we bring children into a formal setting where we call it a school. And now the child is under the guidance and tutelage of, the teacher. But now the child is learning amongst the peers and is becoming one of a larger group. What kind of experiences do we bring to these children? Because, like so many of us have said, it is not exactly teaching that children are learning through. Children are learning through from their experiences. So, if we are able to keep that as our perspective, that children create their own learning, all we need to do is facilitate that process by bringing the right kind of experiences, by allowing them time to work through their experiences. This is what I think encompasses the role of education for children. It cannot be bound to an examination or the index of a textbook with so many chapters over there which need to be finished, and a child ends it by achieving an examination and a qualification after that. It has to be about how the child has also learned to work with its own self and make meaning out of its own experiences. So I think that is the picture of education for me.
That well summed up the this round, where we tried to align for ourselves what education should serve as a purpose for children as well as for adults. And I would like to say here, as a parent, that most parent peers that I see are often stressed about how the child will finish a school project, or what will happen in the exams, or they're even more stressed if they feel that the child has potential, yet the child is not engaged and participative in the learning process, or is not giving their 100%. And all these immediate questions then takes them to the larger big question mark as to how will they be placed in their life as an adult, how will they basically earn their bread and butter, or such things, right? And at a larger level, if we extrapolate this is the question on where society and economy is being led, or the world desires it to be led. So there's a term called creative economy, which is now being said by many industry speakers, I would say. So from being like an objectified economy to a manufacturing economy to a more demographic kind of socioeconomic statistic that we see today, or more involved, socially involved economy, we are now moving to a creative economy where innovation will drive a lot of things, right? So, because ultimately education is all about enabling the coexistence of human beings at a larger social and global level, right? So at that, I would like to come to Prashant. You have extensive experience in the corporate world. So, and you've worked with leading global firms, and you've been also involved in education pretty intensively and passionately. So, and from what I know about the work of the Apprentice Project, you have facilitated a whole engine to uh, enable children with the tools of co-curricular activities. If we zero down further, I would like to ask you, how do you perceive the role of art and creativity in preparing children to be more learning ready, to be more self-engaged, to be more in the sense, and eventually maybe future ready?
Got it. Okay, that's a big question. I'll probably start with a confession myself. I have come through an education system where absorbing knowledge and representing it well in an examination at the end of the year was probably the only measure of success. And I mean, yeah, thankfully, I had cracked that system through most part of my schooling, and all through. And when I think about this aspect of art, at least in my schooling system, art used to be about replicating some standard sceneries. I mean, if the people attending could remember the mountains, the sun, the river, the trees, and some birds, and that's just about what art was defined for us. So personally, I have always lived in the morbid fear of art and continue to consider myself as terrible at it. But that's not the whole thing, right? I mean, but for me, schooling, like the ability to ace exams, just got me the feeling that, oh, I am a top student, and then that persisted through my education. But when I came to my corporate stints, and then first in the manufacturing domain as an engineer, then in the information technology space as a project manager, that's when I realized that the knowledge I had so proudly accumulated in the various classrooms did not help me at all in the dynamic, complex situations that I faced regularly. In fact, now, I mean, in my role as an entrepreneur trying to build an organization, my struggles like get intensified even further, challenges me every single day. So starting from my role as an educator, that was my awakening when I myself was trying to teach a set of children in a government school. And also now, while I'm trying to shape a program that we're implementing for holistic education of children, uh, that's when I recognize the importance of different forms of art and their role in building the muscle to bring things together for creating something which is totally new. Through this, I have seen, like in the limited experience that I've had, I've seen children start to think independently, think critically, bring their own perspective into things, and put up ways to create something which is original, which is innovative, and tackle a problem in a completely different approach, and then which we as adults or so-called educators would never even have thought about when we start impart or enabling education for children. Now I will look at this from the perspective of the economy and the industry. The relevance of this cannot be overemphasized in the current world, right? We are rapidly moving from a workplace that needed following instructions mechanically, performing repeated tasks, and improving efficiency. And then that was possibly the mantra. Now, in the 21st century, things need to be created continuously, and complex problems keep arising, and those need to be solved all the time. Unless children are able to think critically, analyze deeply, apply their own creative, imaginative approaches, and are able to build new things when needed, they will not be suitable for any jobs or even starting something on their own in the future. And when, like, sometimes we talk about future as something that is going to come, I believe that the future is already here in the present, right? So, like, from that perspective, I believe that the ability to be able to think critically, analyze things around them, and create things to solve problems, that's something which is much needed.
Thank you for that confession led premise. It really helps set the stage very well for what we want to bring out. And I wouldn't differ a bit in the kind of education we received. And so many times in my entire career, I had to relearn completely, and I found myself completely without skills to deal with situations like people, or they say think out of the box. When you've been completely boxed, you are now in this economy where there are so many startups in India, and you are asked to be agile and creative, and so it really is quite a lot of mind shift. And that brings me to Suchitra ma'am. From whatever we have so far spoken and heard, it's very clear that education cannot be just training the brain and training one part of us to do certain repetitive tasks, like Prashant mentioned. So and that is the space when people are not able to do deliver on that kind of education, or be in a peaceful, joyful space with that kind of education, is when I think a lot of mental well-being challenges happen. So how do you see art and creativity playing a role in the mental well-being of parents and children, or families, I would say, with education?
So I will like to begin with saying that uh, we should not be making any compartments between art and education and parenting and living. They are all they are all coming in the same basket. In fact, the whole life comes in the same basket, right? Now, secondly, we have to understand it's unfortunate that we have to actually talk about teaching art, being in art. So you can imagine how much we are already away. Like, I resonate with what Mr. Prashant just said, that our education system, or the way we have grown up in a very left brain kind of atmosphere, also for India in a much post colonial kind of a trauma situation, let us say, with our education. We are so far away from our own roots. We are so far away from the artistic attitude. Art is not a thing to be achieved, it's an attitude to be brought in. So we have this we say that let us say somebody is an entrepreneur, and Prashant will agree with this. I mean, you must have also researched on so many entrepreneurs. Or if I talk about myself as a therapist, if we talk about an educationist, if we talk about a businessman, we talk about certain people with a lot of reverence, looking at the kind of work that they have done so far, and we say that this person has taken this almost to the level of art. Okay. Now people say that about great scientists like Einstein, or even psychologists like Viktor Frankl, or even Freud for that matter, or that they have brought in the knowledge in such a manner that they have taken it to the level of art. Now what does that mean? Why is that art superior? In that line itself, we can see that art is put as at a superior space than just understanding science and just understanding calculus or just understanding mathematics, right? Why is it so? Because art all by itself opens up, and I think Van James just touched upon that point when he was speaking at the beginning, when you asked the earlier question, Rituparna, that it opens us to different languages of knowledge. What we are used to is only language of the written and the spoken word. Yeah. But as Indians, we know this even more, that languages of color, languages of seasons, languages of sounds, this is a language all by itself, which is opening up different kind of knowledge and information to us. We are becoming privy to some, I wouldn't say secrets, because when you have an organ closed, you cannot say that somebody else is secretive, but it is me who is deaf, right? So I mean, let us say that we open up these organs of actually seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, and really being able to do that at the real depth. Imagine the world is open for so many different kinds of information and so much of knowledge that whatever we have learned becomes all encompassing, and that is the work of art. So art is a life to be lived. It is not a one thing, one subject to be taught. And we all have gone through those really traumatic, unfortunate situations in our childhood, when some drawing painting class will be oh, this physics teacher is not present today, okay, all children just get together and do art. I mean, that's brainless. But we all have gone through this kind of a really traumatic experience, because I am saying traumatic in hindsight. That time everything felt normal, right? Today you know what you could have missed if you wouldn't have used your own voice for singing, if you wouldn't have used your own imagination for bringing in such splendid colors on the paper, if you wouldn't have danced, if you wouldn't have just let loose, right? I mean, what kind of trauma this could have created in our life? It is even unthinkable. So, art, as I said, is an attitude to have. And when we bring in the truth of art, automatically we are inquisitive parents, we are curious parents, and we are striving parents, right? We are striving educators, we are striving adults. And there is nothing better than a striving adult for a child to imitate and a child to take in as an example. So I think with saying all this, I think I have only brought in a very small fraction of what art can do, and how much it is required in the entire role of parenting and education. And we all can see that it plays a very huge preventive role in mental health. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. The fact about striving adult makes me a tad bit feel good about myself because that's all I'm trying to ever since I have become a parent. And this artistic attitude you
So,
spoke about.
I'm happy that you said that, because Rituparna, if you are a perfect adult, you're useless for a child. You're useless for everybody on this earth. Because
That's a
only
great message for parents that there are
no,
no
no, but
perfect
that's
models. The
that's
striving is the
what is perfect around us. Only dead things are perfect, because
true.
there cannot be anything more happening, right? Yeah, we are engaging. We are dynamic people. So we are living,
I would
and
also
also
like
striving.
yeah. Sorry. I would also like to say that this artistic attitude aspect that you brought out, and people still, because we have, most of us have schooled in the conventional systems that Prashant and Suchita ma'am spoke about, uh, we still see art as a very different subject. And in engineering, for the first time, like there's a subject called engineering drawing, and you are supposed to see an object in 2D and 3D. And at some level, it feels so technical. And I was getting it all wrong in the beginning. And a professor said, have you ever stood and stared at a shadow? Have you seen how, like, if you are seeing an object from one side, you can't see the other side, like it's a cube or rectangular cube, or you can't see the other side. And I was like, nobody ever told me this, or I saw this that kind. Even when assembling a hardcore electronic circuit, someone says it's an art, and I'm like, how do you? Because we are looking at input output, and that brings me to say that we have programmed we have compartmentalized our lives into very different tight boxes. So the difference between living, working, educating are two, like, these are very sharp boundaries. So like in a Waldorf school, we often say that parenting and schooling are very integrated processes. Otherwise, it's a very transactional relationship that a parent and teacher has in conventional systems. and so much of it can be integrated with this artistic attitude is also what I am learning, and that very well paves the way for bringing me to Van. So how do you see now? So we are hearing, we heard about the challenge, we heard about how creativity is so quintessential in education, how it can be a way of living, and so much more as an attitude. How do you see really making, like, art making its space in education? Like, how have you seen art being brought to the classroom in delivering concepts, really, or in enabling the inner forces of the child in their thinking and feeling capacities?
Well, first of all, thank you, Suchitra, for saying what you did about art, because I found that even in some Waldorf schools, art is brought as an extra. It's brought as the sort of luxury subject and an add-on. Whereas if you look at what Rudolf Steiner originally said, the visual arts, the performing arts, all of the various arts will be effective in education if they are not an extra. They're not a subject on their own, but they're worked into the history lesson. They're worked into the geography lesson, into the mathematics, into engineering when you get to physics in middle school and so forth, that the students see that it is connected with everything in life. In a class of 30 students, 10 of those students will be in an arts related field as a career later in life. So that's 1/3 of your group needs to see that relationship that art has to really everything, as you pointed out. One of the things I do when I teach the history of art in 9th grade for high school students is I ask the students, well, what are the different arts? And we begin to list them: painting, drawing, architecture, music. Some classes will get into culinary arts, cooking, dance, all the different arts. And we list them. I try to organize them with the performing arts on one side, the visual arts on the other side, those that are done through time and those that are done in space. And then I erase one of them. Okay, what if we have no music? That means singing, instrumental music, all music, it's gone. What if we take away dance and creative movement? What if we take away architecture? And you take away all the arts and you ask the students, well, what do we have as a world then? And the first thing they say was, well, it's boring. But one sees the interrelationship of the arts through everything that we do in life. And that comes down to how we live ourselves, create ourselves into the future, how we speak. And the arts are so important as a vehicle for educating the child. In the early 1990s, there was a national conference of state legislators in America. And they decided, well, there's been a lot of discussion about what is the importance of arts in education. And so they decided to make a study. They hired experts. These are the governors of each of the 50 states in the United States. They get together for this conference and they put money into a research project. So they were looking at what is the importance of arts in education. And they came up with a list. The experts came up with a list. They tested students to see If they have so many art classes going through the grades, what is the effect on their mathematics scores? What's the effect on their language scores? And it was shown that the more art that students had in school, the better they performed in every other subject. It kept the dropout rates lower in schools. And sorry, my battery is going out here. And some of the things they mentioned were it develops informed perception art, critical thinking skills, self-confidence, self-esteem, self-discipline. It aids problem solving and decision making. It builds multicultural understanding to study the arts, cooperative learning. It engages both traditional and non-traditional learners. It enhances the ability, and this is so important, it enhances the ability to imagine what is not yet. Yeah? And it provides alternative ways to assess a student's performance, and it offers a way to integrate and connect all of the subjects. This is what these state legislators found out. How many Department of Education's leadership changed to bring more art into the public schools? You can imagine. One state actually tried to enhance their arts programs. Yeah, art is still that subject that is taken away when the budgets are being crunched. So that's the wonderful thing I find about Waldorf education, is that the arts are attempted really to be integrated throughout, right through the education of the student up to 12th grade.
Thank you, Van. That was the data as well as the insights, and then the incumbent actions upon us as educators is very well, it's pretty clear, implicit from what you're saying. So Bandana ma'am, can you, like as parents and teachers listening to all of us, it will be helpful to understand examples of what we are already seeing when we bring art to the classroom, directly integrated with learning. We are already seeing that it is a need for even adults in their working spaces. There are people selling courses in design thinking, in visual maps, in cooperative learning, and so many other aspects that Van already mentioned, right? Which means there is a gap there in whatever we have been schooled so far, right? So when you see in the students that you have taken from grades 1 to 8, or you see at Shisha, or in your experience as a teacher, what happened when there was no art and when there was art, and how does it open them up to think and learn better organically?
Thank you, Ritu, for this question. I will begin by addressing a larger audience, not just the audience of a Waldorf school or the Waldorf systems, but for anyone who is here in the interest of their children, whether they are a part of the Waldorf community or not. I think art plays a profound role in the development of children because it allows children to experience authenticity. Now, authenticity is something which can be understood in multiple ways, so I would like to expand on this. When a child feels or experiences that what it is observing, what its ideas are, what's its inner voice talking to itself, when all of these are aligned with whatever is coming from the outside world, that is when a child completely feels authentic. The child experiences truth in the outside and truth inside. what happens, before I go into what happens in a Waldorf classroom, I would like to tell about what happens when we take this experience away from children. Today, actually, the stark reality is that in the world outside, we see that most children experience inauthenticity. They experience a deep conflict both in the inner world and the outer world. Just to give a few examples, I think one of the, or a few that need to be stated here is, we really, most parents want that their children should be good observers, they should be, creative thinkers and all of that. But the reality is that children who idle their time away without using it in a productive work, something that evidences itself as work done, that is waste of time. So children are not allowed to be by themselves, ponder upon things. It's a waste of time. That's a conflict for a child, because you ask me to be a thinker, but you don't give me time to think. That's an outer and inner world conflict. We want our children to love nature and, protect nature as future citizens and caretakers of the planet. And yet most children find it messy to touch soil, messy to play with colors or glue, all of these kind of things. There are more and more experiences of sensorial issues in children. Again, this is because we are very hygiene phobic now. We are constantly wondering about hygiene, but forget that children learn to work with this world by touch. And if we are not experiencing this with a tangibility, then we are steering our children away from the truth of this planet. When we want our children to sit in classrooms which are air conditioned, once again, what kind of reality are we talking about? And it's a conflict. It may not be overt in the the younger age of a child, but it begins to get very explicit in the grown up period of children. In teenage, this conflict comes out as very aggressive behavior, not really digested well, but aggressive behavior. So there are these kind of things. Again, a quality like be confident, and you should be able to be a public speaker and stand in front of people and speak. But we don't realize that it is a progression. It is something that a child builds up over time, over multiple failures, multiple threatening and experiences, but in protected environments. Anything premature can cause long-term harm to the child. So this is a conflict that the child is experiencing in the outer world. Another kind of inner world conflict that the child experiences is when it is constantly today. The truth of children today is that most children across the world are in a constant rush. They're constantly in a chase of accomplishing some things. This could be schoolwork, homework, then comes the coaching class work, then comes the co-curricular classes work, then comes higher expectations, competitions, and other kind of things which are laid in one above the other, because these happen to be indicators of accomplishment, indications of achievements, that my child is doing well, that the education is serving him well. But really, what happens in the bargain is that the child does not get time to be by itself. The me time that I was talking about, the time when you are actually lost in digesting everything that happened to you in the past or today or yesterday. You don't get time to work with your thoughts. You don't get time to work with your questions. You don't get time to consider, reconsider, ponder your experiences. You do not get time to conclude on what happened. You do not get time to commit to your own self. Oh, that was not nice. I don't think I want to do that again. You don't get time to do all this. These are told to you all the time. So authenticity at a point where a child meets his own self is a deprivation today. When we think of art actually is a one-on-one equation between the work getting done and the doer. And it really shuts the world around it. It shuts down everything. The child is just with itself and that work that it is doing. It is immersed deeply into that experience, and that experience is talking to itself. There is a lot of inner movement that happens when children are engrossed in art. The work itself talks to the child. The child does not need someone to tell it whether the work is good or bad. Yes, it helps when a teacher kind of brings a little more attention to details if it is needed. But that is the time when the child is most authentic. The child is so deeply connected with itself. So, World of Education has actually integrated, thanks to Rudolf Steiner, the methodology that he has given to the teachers is how beautifully, like Van just said, when you are integrating art into every single subject, the subject begins to get enlivened. When a particular art is chosen by a thoughtful teacher to enhance the experience of the academic content that the child is working with, immediately that academic content does not remain dull and dry, it begins to speak to the child. And therefore, all subjects of world of education has art integrated into it. It is not a separate experience for children. And this is where world of children are able to be by themselves. For hours, they can work with themselves. They do not need to be entertained. Vis-a-vis, when you look at other children, by the end of the day, they're so exhausted, they're so dry and dulled that now the only way that they can meet inner joy is when they immerse themselves into electronic devices, the media and stuff. Whereas our children are healthily steered away, joyfully so. They can work with themselves. They know how to work with art even when there is no one around. So I think that is the biggest service World of Education is doing for children.
Yes, you know that Pablo Picasso, the Spanish artist, said that every child is an artist. The problem is that when we grow up, we lose that artistry. And if you look at young children, they naturally are artists because it's through play. Their play is creative, and that creative imagination they can be, where it's undirected play, and they're on their own, and they're talking to the phenomena they're involved with. Their imaginations are rich and creative, and the education they go into, the school they go into, is so important that they don't lose that imagination when they come to 9, 10 years old. And as many schools do, and many public schools do, they just stop the art classes. And yeah, that's the wonderful thing about a Waldorf education, is that the arts are seen as a way to make this transition from the imaginative life of the young child into a creatively thinking human being.
What a wholesome round this was in all ways, the way it began and the way it ended in covering perspectives. So, and I'm just learning, absorbing more as a parent than as a moderator. I hear that holistic education needs to cover all aspects of us. In World of Education, they say head, heart, and hands, or we would say in some other philosophies, they would say body, mind, soul, or whichever way we put it. But this unseen inner force that works within us when we live, strive, grow, and work, and this outside impulse. So the conversation between these two is what education trains us to manage over time. And here, creativity is an innate organic potential of human beings, like Van just said about Pablo's quote. And I see my children now being able to express their opinion through art. It may not be a very creative piece. Often I would dismiss it saying, like, what is this? But they would have a whole story in there as to how someone jumped in and then this one fell, or whatever, or something that is not even so visually clear, but they can map it out. and I am still self-judging and doubting myself to even draw squares and circles straight if I have to visually explain something to someone. And this is just one sensory experience we are talking about. It can be auditory for some, it can be um, other experiences. I have personally worked in media and communications field several years, and if I may share quickly, the biggest thing people are challenged with is not people just say, okay, I want to make my business seen and heard and write something nice and get it viral in the social media terms. And I'm always struggling to explain that I will bring your inner content out on paper in words, but the inner content has to be yours. I can't just write something that you are not thinking and feeling. So they don't even know how to communicate what they're doing to the world, and it's such a big gap, you see. And so all of this that you're saying, and I see this in various other fields, when there is so much emphasis on team building these days, when people are not able to connect with each other or explain their valid points of view with each other. And we are talking about we see competitive models in education, whereas the collaborative model in education, like a Waldorf education or any such pedagogies, allow interplay of humans. And all of this, I would say, encompasses an artistic attitude, or bringing ability to show it in a way that the other can possibly understand, and we understand ourselves better also through that process. So it's amply clear that there is a lot of work to be done in this space. Even though some parts of the world are very developed economically, some parts are still growing, some larger consciousness is towards sustainability also. I feel art also brings in a lot of consciousness towards the materials we use, and like what we consume and what we reproduce, right? Not just in terms of paints and paper, but like Van mentioned in terms of visual art, performing arts, literary art. It gives a huge impetus to expression. I would just like to share a quick example. There is a dance teacher I spoke. She works in a mainstream school, and she's a pure dance teacher, like a co-curricular activity, the way we set out in the beginning. Yet, she's now being asked to prepare students to perform something on a science project, on a Hindi day, on some other language, and so on. So people are feeling the need to this and to do this. Yet there are not enough tools, I would say, known to people, or not many. Like Van said, that when the situation is tight, you would first take off the extras, as they say, and art is one of them. Like a science and a math and a English will not probably go out so soon. And even Prashant had shared earlier that when these things are brought to the classroom in a dull and dry way, children are not really interested. Like so there, what is the message for educators as parents and teachers in living lives with a more artistic attitude, or conducting a class with more artistic attitude, or just to be able to bring this land of forces in the inner and outer world for the children? Prashant, I would like to come to you again.
Yeah, and then I'll just pick from what Van and also what Bandra ma'am was sharing. And then this is something as an organization we kind of dislike when we hear this word. And then this is something that we hear quite often when these mediums are put together as extracurricular activities. And then that kind of makes us cringe because these are not extra. And that's true. I mean, when I started teaching as well, unfortunately, and I was a math and science teacher, and on any given day, at least in my initial period of teaching, a math extra class trumped an art class. And then I again start with a confession that happened in my classroom as well. And that realization kind of dawned on me much later, on these are not extra, and these are something which are as essential as other curricular subjects, and hence co-curricular probably is the right word. And then slowly like getting these into the subjects itself, like be it science or math, which seemingly look kind of disconnected to art, but if we are able to bring that in, that makes or takes the class to a completely different level. And in terms of the learning ability of children, how it enhances that. And again, I'm like, that's a very selfish way to look at it. That's not the purpose of art in itself, but even if you look at it from like a very tangible perspective, how it transformed the learning interest of children was something which kind of brought me to light, that aspect of the light. And as I mentioned, for me, through childhood till the time of growing up and becoming an educator, the meaning of art was completely different, and unfortunately so. So yeah, just my summary would be to first, I mean, in very simple terms, not look at it as extra, or not look at it as a hobby that is just fun to do. It's about life. And if the connection that Suchitra earlier made, right? I mean, it's not about this is one part of life, or this is one thing that you're learning. It's about how you live. So it's as integral as that. And I hope at least across the world, like educators or people who are defining how education needs to be, this becomes integral as any other subject that we are learning.
Thank you, Prashant, for that message on art being integrated in learning. Suchitra, ma'am, your final words on how art can be integrated as a way of living, and for, let's say, I would add to that, more peaceful and joyful living, because as human beings, at the end of the day, we all crave for a good night's sleep, and in like to indulging ourselves to work uh, where we truly feel wholesome about ourselves. Because most adults that we see working today, we pay bills and EMIs and so on, and so many people are so well established, yet there is such a cringing feeling on a Monday morning and say, oh, okay, we're looking forward to the next holiday. So how can art help bridge the gap, at least in to some extent? Because like you said, that education is more for adults.
So, knowing that even art requires, I mean, when you want to take something from just a feel good factor to a skill to a way of life, and then we talk about an artistic attitude, I think that is the way it would go. Because the attitude will not just come by saying that I want to feel good about everything. That is entertainment, that is not art. Yeah. So, every art will require a certain discipline. There is a certain discipline with which you need to work with colors and paper and visual arts, and there's a certain discipline that you need to work with movement. There is a certain discipline that you need to work with singing or playing an instrument, or so there is a certain discipline inherent in the experience and the expression of all these artistic media, as we would call it. One aspect of that, you know, uh, learning learning and relearning as adults definitely takes a lot of effort, because we have not grown into that discipline. And to use a very anthroposophical term, probably it's not, unfortunately, and probably it's not a part of our etheric. So we need to build it, by giving that time, giving that space, and providing that kind of commitment to it. Now, which in itself is a striving factor when it comes to both being a parent or being an educator. And if we achieve it, I mean, amazing, because that is what the children around us would want. That they will want to emulate a life. They will not want to emulate something that one is, like a very basic thing. Like, there are a lot of parents who come for counseling and therapy, and they will say, you know what, I'm really forcing my child to read books, and my child is not reading. So the first question I ask them, you need to bring me the photograph of the library that you have in your home. And there is not even a book rack. Forget about a library. So probably this is the smallest rack that I have in my entire home. So every room is full of like, and one entire wall is full of books. Now, if there is no, I mean, you don't have even the basic material with you, and then you're expecting your child to read a lot. How does it even, how is it even coming to any kind of reality? So it's the same thing with every art, isn't it? I mean, are there instruments around that I can just pick up and start playing in my free time, or just dabble with? Are colors and papers, and is it a part of life? Are plans or things to do a part of life, or is it that the moment I'm free, I'm looking onto a screen and I'm getting on Instagram? Now, if I'm doing that as an adult, how can I expect a child to do anything different? Well, it's even beyond stupidity, in fact, to even expect that. So that is the part, like, as adults we need to understand that it is going to be an effortful process, because we are not built into that reality. Now, if we want to build that reality for the children, then we need to take those efforts. That is one. Now, secondly, from a purely from a space of what schools can do and what today, uh, I don't know, because I was doing a certain research and I had to do a few presentations on education, holistic education, and I was called more as an anthroposophic person over there. But I had to review, in a way, the national education policy. I don't know how many of you are have read the entire document. It's very huge. It's a big document. But let me tell you, the national education policy is the most amazing thing that is really getting implemented right now. And it is through this platform, if I can urge all schools and parents, teachers, to actually go through the entire document. It is so insightful and it is so inspiring. So the policy is made, but now if I choose to be non-authentic and I choose to follow my old ways, even when at a state level, policy level, government level, things are changing. And if I say that no, I want to still continue uh, cheating, let us say, as an adult or an educator, and I don't want to give the children what they are supposed to have, right? Now, who can cure me? No one, isn't it? So we have to see that there are certain things done from both ends. There are parents, like all of you, parents and educators, and this Waldorf movement, and there are so many other movements of holistic education which are there, at least in our country, which are person oriented initiatives. So there are parents who are thinking, who are really wanting to do, people like Bandana, who are actually educated in a completely different stream of education, but then the heart's calling was so huge that she wanted to start a school and really put her entire effort into this kind of work. So these are person oriented, or person initiatives, which are great, which are required for a society. Now there is also a higher will which is required, which comes from our states, our governments, our policy, education system in general, examination systems in general. So we are actually able to see that this person oriented and the state oriented things are somewhere meeting now. But we need to give it that kind of importance, and we should really implement it the way. So that's my request, and actually want to urge everybody. It's a huge document, but please do a reading. It's such a poetically written document, I can't tell you. It's simply beautiful. So I will want to urge all of you to really go through it, because you will anyway have to go through it as educators. I mean, that's a compulsion. So might as well make it a happy experience. So All right. That is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Suchitra ma'am, for bringing attention to the fact that art, building the kind of life that we would want to build for our children takes discipline and commitment. And as a parent, I couldn't vouch more. It's been tremendous amount of unlearning and relearning, and yet there is just striving, and hopefully that's a good space to be in. And yes, national education policy. Honestly, even I have just skimmed through it, not read in great detail. But thank you for bringing attention to that fact that even at the government level, there is the right consciousness and things can change. But unless, as implementers, as educators, as parents and teachers, we don't take the necessary steps, things are not going to move. So coming to Van, how do you? I'm sure because you have a very rich experience of art in education. Can you share a few more examples of what educators, as parents and teachers, can do to bring in art really as a way of life or a way of thinking, way of learning? In any specific suggestions you can make, or any such things? Because also in that part of the world, culturally, you all have a different consciousness, so we might benefit from that too, because many of us are, of course, everyone's very experienced in their field, but we are discussing holistic education here at this stage because we are at the brink of change.
Be courageous and discipline yourself. Submit to a daily practice. Your loyalty to this is a ring on the door. Keep knocking, and the joy inside will eventually open a window and look out to see who's there. That's a poem by Rumi, a 13th century mystic Sufi poet. And I teach that to high school students. I think that is so important that one decides to discipline oneself. Meditation, regular practice, artistic work, even if it's at the point of you have a cube of butter on your table at every mealtime, rather than cutting it in 90-degree angles, sculpt your pad of butter. Sing along with elevator music. Write a poem. Write just a line every day that has to do with some inner experience that you've had in relation to the world or to your family. I think that that's really the question is, how does the wonderful thinking that goes into a policy, how does it actually get implemented? It's only through individuals starting the work. Yeah.
Thank you, Van, for bringing art into this discussion. I was actually trying to think that is there a more artistic way of communicating to our listeners of what we are saying, and you just nailed it. Thank you for bringing.
Well, actually, I must make a confession too, that I was nervous about doing this webinar without having a brush in my hand or pictures to refer to, and just talking. But it also needs to become artistic, how we communicate with each other.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So, Vandana ma'am, I'm actually short of questions in terms of like really saying that, okay, what needs to be said, because I think we are really feeling the need for that highest alignment inside us and outside us, feeling the need for engaging all our capacities as adults and children, not just our thinking and ability to follow instruction capacities. We are all feeling the need to um, raise children in a way that you had once said, that who are able to design and shape the future in tandem with their inner calling. And like I had read this somewhere, that when we say someone's doing a job, it's just with the head. When we say they are doing with their head and heart, it's a career. And when we say they're doing with their head, heart, and hands, it's a calling. And all of us, all of you on this panel, through your own lives, I have pretty much moved from a job to calling. And so please share something about how, like, we can
Yes,
really
Ritu.
a
Let
nice
me
way
make
to-
it easy for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I really feel that I want to bring this whole conversation in a warm embrace with respect to children again. Very often, art is trivialized. Most of us heard about how art is trivialized in the way that when budgets are tight, we just brush it aside. It is treated as a co curricular activity, it is treated as if it's something to do beyond work. And it is trivialized as probably play. But I want most of the people listening to know that art is the only way that you are actually building a bridge into the future. The future where you will need, without the support of any elder around you, to work with the grown-ups and the peer community, the elders. You'll be an adult and you'll have to be an adult and work with adults at that time. People come in various shapes, forms, sizes, attitudes, behaviors, belief systems. They are all packages of all these things. And every individual has to find a way to connect with each of them and find a way to convey and receive everything that we want to exchange with each of us. I find that art is just like that. In a world of school, we work with material arts and performing arts and literary arts, and each of them have a different way. When we work with soft crafts, we're working with wool and we're working with paper and doing things, and that material has its own nature. It cannot change its nature. But for me to work with it, I need to change my inner attitude so that I get the outcome that I desire. When we are working with paints, and Van can tell you that when we begin the first stroke of wet on wet, it's threatening because the water does not seem to listen to my brush and my stroke. It has its own attitude. And I need to attune myself over time with practice to make it work between us. The music, my feet don't listen to me when I want to dance, but I need to work myself with the music and the setting and everything. Art is the only time when we are internally working with an external, medium, which is extremely challenging, but also very pleasing and inviting and so warm that I don't want to give up. And this capacity of working with multiple arts at a given point of time, which we do as part of a world of curriculum, is constantly moving children into a higher realm. Someone just said art is an attitude. It is a discipline. Definitely, it is a discipline, but it is not something which someone is enforcing upon me. It is my own discipline that I build up over time. It is self work. It translates into my capacity, like Van said, to be able to communicate artistically with somebody. So if I have to put my thoughts together, like in this small little session that we had to pack so much. It needed so much of inner work. So I think art is the primary experience where a child begins to work with its own self, with its own will and love. So I think this is primal. We should not ever, ever trivialize it. I think I would like to close with that. Thank you.
Sorry, my screen also got zapped with so much valuable content. Thank you so much. And I think being a parent, I come back to the point of being a parent, because parent is the first one to usher a human life into this world. And then, of course, handing them over to teachers, not handing them over, but really collaborating with teachers to raise a human life. That itself is so much conscious work. And I often say to myself and everyone that for all other fields, for a career, let's say we have almost 20 years of education behind us or something like that, even in the conventional way. But for raising human beings, we really have no education. So we are learning here.
Oops.
Yeah, we lost her again. Yes.
We'll give it a few seconds, I guess.
She should be back. Yes, some of the challenges of such a setup. But I think we just benefited the best advantage of having an online experience. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, thank you for organizing it.
It was so important. And I think each of us have got so enriched by what each of you had to share. Thank you so much for
Yes.
being here and giving your time and making this happen. Ritu is still not here.
And thanks to you for organizing this very well. This was very good, quite
Thank you
enriching.
so much. Thank you. Thank you, Prashant. You know, it's commendable the way you have, shifted from what you were doing to where you are now and the way you're working with children.
Thank
Yes.
you.
She's back.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm really sorry. So, see, we have striving at all levels. I was so full trying to summarize the beautiful things that all of you said, and this just went off. So, yeah, we heard that art is not, firstly, education is not just education of the mind, it is of all capacities inside us. Education is life, and life is art, and then art is striving, it is challenging, inspiring, it is discipline. And it really makes us reflect all aspects of who we are and how we live. And there is this Japanese book about work and life called Ikigai, which is pretty popular in the mainstream also these days. But most people uh, are, it's like a big red question mark as to how do you achieve what you love, what you have to give, what is your sense of purpose, and what the world needs. How do you meet a common intersection of all these things? I think the way we spoke about education today, if we at least model a life at homes and at our classrooms, using some of these things that we learned, then we will probably have children who will begin to find their ikigai, and that will be a sweet spot for the future of society and economy. Thank you so much, each one of you, for this uh, for your august presence and this such a valuable discussion.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
this is my first time to listening to such valuable opinions about holistic education from each one of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, really. And thank you to all of you. Thank you.